are starting a new course, and the new course is the New Testament survey.
Tuyamba okusambirira okupya antemwa muntu upya kuwa kusambirira otuletera kufuairikisha mu kipangano kipya.
Now, so once we are done with New Testament survey, we are going to go to another course, which is Old Testament survey.
Ero tuwapuisha okukusambirishanya kulituletende kobwelelo tukatwalirira okuya mu kusambirishanya kunduka kongapo kwa kufuairisha mu kipangano kya kale.
So let's begin by defining the terms. The first one, we are saying, what is the New Testament?
Na tubadirepo okwilula mucho tulera njiramu mushe ekipangano kipya nichinshi.
The New Testament is the second major division of the Bible, which consists of 27 books.
Ekipangano kipya kipimvya kimo ikya kibiri ikya kipingo ikyakwata amabuku mukati kachiko 10 antemu 24 na chinerubali.
We know that the Old Testament has 39 books, so together they make 66 books.
Tutwatira okola ti ekipingo kyonse tutwatira kyakwata amabuku 66 lero mu kipingo kyakalemu aba 39.
The books in the New Testament were written in the first century.
Amabuku mu kipangano kipya yalembelwe mu century wakubali antemwa mu myaka emyanda ishakubala mukati.
Then these books include the teachings, life and death and resurrection of Jesus Christ.
Aya mabuku mu kipangano kipya yaba n'amafunde eyo Yesu Kristo alefunda, imfa ya kwa Yesu Kristo, ukubushiwa kwa Yesu Kristo.
They also include the history and the doctrinal foundations of Christianity.
Kabiri amabuku mu kipangano kipya yakwata efyo imikalire yakunuma ne kishinga chine pamulandu wa kipingo.
Now, so we have looked at what New Testament is. So let's look at what a survey. Since we are saying this is a New Testament survey, what is a survey?
Natumona ekipangano kipya ni kingi. Numbamu tulera ndogo ati isambiro lipya kipangano kipya kufuairikisha wachiko mukufuairikisha nomba usheo kufuairikisha kinshi.
So a survey is a comprehensive examination or an overview of a particular subject, field or area of study.
Okukufuairikisha tulera ndamo kufuairikisha kumo kulino kushika mukufuairikisha ichine chaba mu kipangano kipya.
So it normally involves systematically collecting, analyzing and summarizing information so that that information is presented to people to have a broad understanding of what is being studied.
Okukufuairikisha kuntu kumo ngomo tulandiro kwati kwashika uko kushabulirwe filelo mukwikala mukupitukamo ukushiningisho kwebati neryo kireperwa ku bantu kintu kimo ikifuairikishwe bwimo.
Yeah, so it's a detailed overview. Some overviews are just like a summary, but a survey is a detailed overview of a particular study or subject matter that you are studying.
Kufuairikisha kulate kufuairikisha kwa pamundu lero kufuairikisha mukusangamo ikishinka ichakumanina chonse muri kiriya muri fuairikisha mwandemo isambiriro muri fuairikisha.
And the surveys are done in all sorts of areas in academic research, in social sciences, in business, even in biblical studies.
Ukufuairikisha tulelanda takufuaira bapye kufuairikisha mu kipingo lero kufuairikisha kwaba namukusambirira okwakusana okusambirira limbi mulesambirira mu bukwebo mulesambirira mu mikalire y'abantu kuli okufuairikisha okwashika lero tulesambirira pa kipangano kipya kufuayilisha kwa waffe kuweka mu kipangano iyo.
So now let's define now what the New Testament survey. Since we've looked at the New Testament, we have looked at what the word survey means. So let's look at what the New Testament survey means.
Epo twakirolekesha ekipangano ekipya nikingi twamona n'okufuayilikisha okwo mbana tukikuminganye bushe okufuayilikisha kwa kipangano kipya nikingi.
So a New Testament survey is an academic discipline or education study that provides a comprehensive overview of the New Testament.
Ulutulera ndolu wa kufuayilikisha kwa kipangano kipya kufuayilikisha ukushika kwa kufuayilikisha ekipingo ko kyatendeke ukushika mu nkyende shonse mu butandiko bwayana.
It gives students or readers a broad understanding.
Kufuayilikisha okwo kuli mu abasambi mu akupeera abasambi ukwishiba ukukalamba ukukulu pali kira kintu balesabiramu.
It will tell you what is contained in the New Testament.
Ukufuayilikisha kwala tulondolwela ante mwakwala alondolola ichaba mukati mu kipangano kipya.
What was happening during the time they wrote the Bible, the surrounding environment.
Kwala tulondolwela ifyala ekitika pali lyenshita ekipingo ekipya nti mu kipangano kipya kyale lembwa.
Then it also tells us who wrote it.
Kabiri kyala tulondolwela bushe niani wakiremberera ngu nibani balelemba amabuko.
And the importance of the New Testament.
N'obukankala bulimu mu kipingo kipya.
So now let's look at the purpose. What is the purpose of the New Testament survey?
Ngo bukankala natumone obukankala bushe bukankala nshi buli mu kipingano kipya.
So the New Testament survey aims to provide you with understanding of what was happening at the time they were writing the New Testament.
Obukankala buli mu bwakwebati butupeele antemu obukankala buli mu kipangano kipya mu kukyekyeeta mu kufuayilikisha butupeele bushe bingi fyala ekitika pali lyenshita kyalelembwa.
Then it also tells us how the New Testament is structured.
Kabiri fyala tulondolwela bushe ekirina ekipangano kipya kyatandikwa shani.
Then it also tells us theological themes or teachings, different teachings, major teachings of the New Testament.
Kabiri fyala tulondolwela kiri ekishinka ekikomo twabulamu mulya mu kipangano kipya ekikomo kya kishinka.
So it helps you as a reader of the New Testament to have insight into the life and teachings of Jesus Christ, the growth of the early church, and the writings of the apostles.
Kyala tuafuilisha fwe bakabelenga fwe balebelenga okwishiba ukufunda kwa Yesu Kristu, okukula kwa Yesu Kristu, n'okukula okutendeka kwa lukuta lwa omuli wa Yesu Kristu ng'olukuta kutendeka antemwa n'emirembere y'abatumwa.
So now this is the way that the New Testament survey, or the things that it focuses on.
Ebyo ebintu ekipangano kipya mu kuchenchenta kiroleshapo antemwa tulolekeshapo.
As we look at each book in the New Testament, we will focus on the following.
Ero twalatendeka okumona mu ibuku limo mabuku mu kipangano kipya ebifintu fyalako nkapofo tukalamu.
Number 1, the author and the date the book was written.
Ikyakubala walembele n'enshita liri ebuku lyalembelwe.
The people he wrote to, the audience.
Kubantu alembeleko.
The reason for writing or the purpose of writing the book.
Umulandu alembele liri ebuku.
Then we look at the key verses.
Tukalolesha n'eshinte liri ebuku antemwa lya malembo.
Then we will look at the major themes and the structure of each book.
Kabiri tukalolesha n'efiputulwa vya mitwe muli lyebuku.
Then we look at what makes that book different from other books.
Kabiri tukesa lolesha bushe mukulemba kwa mabuku bushe bupusanonshi bulipo kuli lyebuku kusana kuli nankwe.
Then we draw lessons. What do we learn from this book for us as believers today?
Kabiri tukakwatefya kusambirira mu bushe vinshi twabulamo nga kuli baifwe ino nshitafwe bachetekele mu Yesu.
So that's how we'll be looking at each of the 27 books.
Enshila imo twakulalolekeshamo chila ibuku muchipangano chipya.
Now let's look at the overview of the 5 sections of the New Testament.
Na tumone emo chaya nshikwa ifikomo ifili 5 mu chipangano chipya.
So the books are actually divided, or the way the New Testament is structured it is structured in 5 sections.
Emo echipangano chipya chatandikwa kutwala ndikwa chakwate impya ifili 5.
The first one looks at the Gospels.
Ichipimpya chakubala chilolesha pambila nsoma.
And this covers Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
Imbila nsoma ikumanya amabuku Mateo, Marko, Luka na Yohane.
The second section is the Acts of the Apostles with only one book.
Ichakonka bwe chipimpya milimo y'abatumwa ibyo likwetefye ibuku limo.
Then the third section are Pauline epistles. These are letters written by Paul. It starts with the book of Romans and ends with the book of Philemon, or the letter to Philemon.
Ichipimpya cha butatu mu chipangano chipya chitendeka n'amakalata ayalembele Paulo. Aya makalata atendeka n'ebuku ly'Abaloma uyafya okupelera na kalata wakwa Philemon.
Then section 4 looks at the general epistles. These are from Hebrews through to Jude.
Ichipimpya cha bune cha number 4 chena chilelolesha pankalata ishashalesha bambi.
And then the final one is Revelation, which also consists of one book.
Ichipangano chipya ichipimpya cha kulekelesha cha number 5 usokololo.
Okay, so now let's just go over the 5 sections. Just give an overview. First, the Gospels.
Na tupitulukemo na kabiri ukumonemo chipangano chipya cha kanishiwa chitendeke nembila nsuma.
So the Gospels cover the overview of the life, ministry, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ, including his ascension to heaven.
Ukulolesha chilelolesha pambila nsuma ilelolesha pamwe wakwa Yesu Kristu, imilimo yakwa Yesu Kristu, imfo yakwa Yesu Kristu, uusho wakwa Yesu Kristu.
Then we will do a comparative study of what are called synoptic gospels. Synoptic gospels refer to the first 3 gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, because they are structured the same way.
Okukusambirira kwala suntinkanya ukubula kumbila nsuma isha mabuku ya 3 ya kwa Mateo, Marko na Luka na Yohane.
Just
na Luka.
Yeah, just Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and then we'll look at John, because John is totally different from Matthew, Mark, and John the way it was written.
Aya tatu yalinga aya paleneko lelo ukulemba kwebuku lya kwa Yohane kuliko kwa kusanako.
Then we will look at key themes. The gospel looks at key themes such as the kingdom of God, discipleship, Jesus as the Messiah, and many others.
Kabili mukulekesha twala mwana ishinte yafyo tulesambira antemo ishinto yamitwe imitwe iyakanike ngobufumu bwa kwalesa na obusambi na Yesu Kristo ngomukusushi.
Then when you go to the book of Acts, this one involves the study of the early church history and the spread of the gospel.
Nga twaya mu kipimfya kya bubiri kya mirimo y'abatumwa twalaisa tumone ifyakonkapo ng'okubebeeta ulukuta kukutendeka okulanda kwa ambulansi mantemu okushimikira kwa ambulansi.
Then we look at the role of the Holy Spirit in the growth of the church.
Kabiri tukeesaalulesha ku mulimo kwa mpasho wa mushiro ulukuta mukutendeka.
And we also look at key figures such as Peter and Paul and their missionary journeys.
Kabiri tukeesaalulesha ng'abantu abali ng'abatangirire makamaka ng'abasambi bakwalesa oli nga Petero, Paulo mukubomba kwakwe nangu mulwendo lwakubombera lesa.
So the third section, Apolline episodes, this is where we examine the letters written by Paul to various churches and individuals.
Ikyabutatu tugeesa mona mu makalata yakwa Paulo yo tugeesa mukumonamo demo Paulo aleeta ndalira n'okulembera kumukutesha lekanalekana imu n'okulembera ku bantu balekanalekana.
Then we'll look at key themes such as justification by faith, the body of Christ, Christian ethics, and also we'll look at the background of each of the letters.
Lesa nulamukulolesha kumutwe kukalamba wakubebeta ukangala bwakwalesa na mukuishwa palilesa ifya palanga okusangululwa kichetekelo mubiri wakwa Yesu Kristu no wina Kristu imbela ya wina Kristu,
and focusing on what was going on when the letter was written.
Nokumona ifya lechitika ilwenkalata shalelembwa.
Then we go to number 4, which is the study of general epistles. So we are looking at all other epistles that were not written by Paul. These include Hebrews, James, 1st and 2nd Peter, 3rd to 4th John, and Jude.
Tukesa sera nomba pacha bune cha number 4 ukumona ingalate shimbisha lemelwe nababala Yobu, Petero wakubala Petero wa kibiri, Yohane wakubala wa kibiri wa kitatu yapena kuli Jude kulya.
Then these emphasize a lot on practical Christian living, faith and perseverance.
Kabili aina mabuku yale komkomesha sana pabwikalo bwa wina Kristu mumbera na mwichitile.
Then the final one is Revelation. We'll give an overview of the apocalyptic literature, or the literature or the things that are going to happen at the end, the symbols that are involved in book of Revelation, and the prophetic messages that are contained therein.
Mukulekelesha twalaisa muku antimo tukesa kusambishwa balwa busokololo pafileisa mukuchitwa mukulekelesha kumbela ya chalo na mubusesemo na mufya kumwenako ifyo fyalangirirwa musokololo muibuku lya sokololo.
Then we'll look at the interpretation of the major themes such as the end times, the return of Christ, and the final judgment.
Tukesa olosha nemitwe ikalamba mukuyilula mufyalembwa mushita yakulekelesha kwisa kwa Yesu Kristu n'okupingula kwakulekelesha kwakwalesa.
So this is a fully fledged course, so please I encourage you to be taking notes, especially those of you who have no access to WhatsApp. The other people, we send them the notes the way they are, the way we are following them. But those of you who have no WhatsApp, you have no email where we can send you the notes, please make sure that you are taking the notes. You pick the major things out of what we are discussing, so that you can be able to study them and prepare for the exam. But the importance is not the exam. What is important is for you to acquire the knowledge. Number 1, to apply in your life. Number 2, to apply in your ministry.
Mwibana bakwalesa chikankala ifitulesa mbishanya pintu ifya isuruwamu ifya kumanyine filingiro kusambilira ehicho tule mikonkomesha no kumikoselesha ukulalemba kyonse fyomulesa mbilira mulebeka tepamula ndufye wa mashindano abukangala bukalamba wakuchinje emyeo Yesu pamula tulesa mbile fya shika.
So that is the importance, and we will encourage you to actually take note of that. So at this point, before we go to the next section, we would want to find out if you have any questions about what we have said so far. So if you have any questions, please, we would like to hear from you what you think about the New Testament and what we have said so far. So please call us on 0773 835272 or 0955 526 404.
Mwe bana bamfumu apa twalondololako mu twalondolera twapera kwenshita mwinge bushako nga kutumwa fwa ifya kufuaisha kwa ntemwa ukuipusha pato twatandika ekotatu ya mukushika unifitwa chilanda eicho batupela ya number.
So the number is 0773 83 5272. So if you have any questions on what we have said or general questions on the New Testament, please, we are giving you an opportunity to ask.
Anabakwata amepusha lyonse patyo twalanda ntemwa epusha byo kuli konse pamulandu wachipanga nochipya kuti vachipusha mkwani.
We are giving you an opportunity so that we don't rush at the end.
Tule mpele chakaniko kuti tatu ni chilile bambela.
So the number is, you are through to the program. Hello, please go ahead. Yes, sir. Okay, thank you very much. Now, it's important to note that the Bible consists of the Old and the New Testament. Now, the Old Testament was pointing to things that were going to happen.
Mufyo bayipusha ukwati bushe nichisa chilanga ichibye pachipingo chakale nechipya. So cho tudayasuka kwati ichikankala kuishibwa kwati Bible yonse chipingo chonse chakwate chipangano chakale nechipya.
So the Old Testament was pointing to things that were going to come.
Ichipangano chakale chale sonta kufintu ifileisa.
Whilst the New Testament fulfills what was written in the Old Testament.
Kabili kuchipangano chipya tena chilefikirisha ifyalandiwe kuchipangano chakale.
And then it also points to the future of what is going to happen until the end of the world.
Ichipingano chipya chena kabili futi chile sonta kumtanshi nefikesa chitika kuja.
So for Christian living, we need both the Old and the New Testament, because without the Old Testament, there are a lot of things you wouldn't understand. You wouldn't even understand what sin is. You wouldn't understand even what sacrifice is. You wouldn't even understand how we were created. So the Old Testament is very, very important.
Chokuli fafovena Kristu tulefuaika fyonse chipangano chakale nechipya kuti tuingeshiba bwino ushe ichipailo ni chinchi ushe efyole sala ndilomwa kusalusa nifinshi ifyo finga fikishwa mchipinga.
And the Old Testament is still applicable to us today, except for those things the New Testament has clarified that we don't need to follow them in the New Testament. For example, we don't have to be sacrificing animals because Christ has already died. So there are things that are very specific that were going on in the Old Testament, and the Bible in the New Testament has made it clear that those things have been fulfilled, including whether you are worshiping on Sunday or worshiping on the Sabbath, whether you are waking or whether you are resting. Those things have been fulfilled in the New Testament. So that is very important. Some people want to throw away the Old Testament. No, the Old Testament consists of important things. If anything, the Bible of the apostles before they wrote the New Testament was the Old Testament.
Fwe na Kristo tulefuwaika ekipingano kyakale n'ekipingano kipya kyonse fira twafwa kanofye ekyo Bayibuli eyine mu kipangano kipya yasonto okuba bati fye natafifire fya kitika nga ikyakumwenako ng'okupeera efipairo fyanama bantu Yesu Kristo umwine aliba ng'ekipairo kyamyo Yesu so fya Bayibuli yasontamu ukana sapote tukiserero ekipangano kipyefo kyasumina tufire twakitana kwikala na ekipangano kipya.
I hope that answers the question. So again, the number that you can call us on is 0955 526 404 or 0773 835272.
Na chetekela moto walondolwela wasukwa.
So as we wait for you are through to the program. Thank you, Gideon. Go ahead. Thank you. Okay, what to do, just send a message to this same number you have called on. Send your name and anyone else who wants to be part of the studies. Send your name, the church you go to, the district where you are, your church, and your denomination. So we are talking about your name, your church, the church you attend, or denomination, the district, your position in church. Those are the things that you need to send. You are welcome.
Bambi abengafaayo okuyirunda ku balera ndati batemwa okutuleesambishana leero nga kulina bambi abalefu okuyirundako okusambirira okuti batomeshinali abo ku district bekala kulukuta bapepamo antemwa mulimu babomba nga akafulo omulumukuta kuti batutumina kubompye nambala yine tulebomba.
And it will be very good also if you send a WhatsApp line, because then we can be sending you the notes.
Kabiku kyawamisha aponga kuti batutumina namba yo babompya ku WhatsApp pamulandu wako tule batumina nama notes ya tule kwata tulesambirapo.
Okay, so as we wait for any other call, if at all there will be any, let's begin to look at the historical background of the New Testament.
Tulelo lelako kutuita kumbi na tumone kumuma kwa kutunduka kwa chipangano chipya.
We are going to look at what was happening in the world, or what the world of the New Testament looked like.
Atwala mona ifyalestika antemwa ichalo icho chipangano chipya chane belwemo.
So that's what we are going to look at now. And if you still have a question on anything, you can still call us. We are on, our phone lines are open. We want you to participate. So the New Testament was actually written during the first century at a time that was very, very complex and very, very difficult.
Ekipangano kipya kyalemberwe panshita yaliko yakakata kabiri yashupako
And the environment was influenced by various factors, including politics, religion, society, and language.
Inchendelia and demonstratia, Yadia Kakatamo Twachilandia Pamlandovati, Modificanza Fiachalo, Mwadi, Upepo Sana, Yadinistea, Shupa.
Now, understanding the context or the environment that was prevailing at that time is very, very important in interpreting the Bible or the text.
Chili chikankalo kuishiba ifi ale chiteka panchita chipangano chipya chalelembwa pamulandoka kuti chatwafwa umwakwilula ichebo chakwaleza muchipangano chipya.
So let's begin with the politics.
Na tutendeke nefikansa fyachalo.
What was life like? What sort of politicians were there at that time?
Bushe umwe wafikansa fyachalo bushe abale kansa na mjamu fikansa nibani balimo.
So at that time we had what was called the Roman Empire.
Bali yenshita twakwete abalinga kumita chimkutumula abaloma.
Now, an empire is a very big area that a particular group of people are running or are ruling. They are ruling. It covers several countries or societies or nationalities. It is a very big area consisting of several countries if we use modern day language.
Achibalanda empire. Bufumu ubobuli buletungulula amabufumu ayengi yabaya tungululwa nobufumu.
Now the Bible talks of 3 or 4 or 5 major empires that started with of course we have the Assyrian Empire, which you can read about, especially the book of Kings. And then from there we have the Babylonian Empire that conquered the Assyrian Empire.
Anga twalolesha mukutendeka kula twaliumfwa kwali amabufumu aya kalamba pamutuma bufumu tumbi mfya palange ine tulenda tuloma kulina Assyrian Empire na Babylonian Empire.
Then after the Babylonian Empire there was what was called the Persians and the Medes, or let's just say the Persian Empire.
Panuma ya Babylonian Empire kwali na empire imbi yasharikishenga Assyrian Persian.
Then after the Persian Empire then came the Greek Empire with Alexander the Great, who conquered the other empire, the Persian Empire.
Kabikwa ishile konkana bumbi bufumu bukalamba wale tungululwa
with the Greeks, with Alexander the Great as the leader.
Alexander.
Now after that then came the Roman Empire, which conquered the Greek Empire.
Roman Empire.
After the Roman Empire, there has never been an empire as big and as powerful as the Roman Empire. Not even an American empire, which is not an empire at all. Not even the British Empire. It could be compared to the Roman Empire. After the Roman Empire, the only other empire that will come that will have so much influence is the empire of Jesus Christ.
Aba Roman Empire baisa takwali bumbi bufumu bwakula kuchira pali bufumu bwali bukalamba na makaya kalamba yote tupala kanyeko na pali ino yishida kutwingala ndati za American Empire ngakukonkate tibe na empire antemwa ya kulanda na kaliayo.
So the New Testament was written during the height of the Roman Empire, which controlled most of the Mediterranean world.
Ichipangano chipya chalembere pali yishita ero kwali ubufumu bukalamba ubwo bwale tungulula pakati kesonde pali.
then these included even Judea, where Jesus and the area Christian movement started from. So the New Testament is written politically in the context of the Roman Empire.
Ngaba Roman Empire batungulule n'enchenje yonse iyo Yesu Kristu atyalibwemu abombelemo ngatwalolesha palya panchenje.
So let's look at a number of political factors that were prevailing at that time.
Na tumone ifya kupende fingi ifya chitekwe mumfikansa fya chalo fya lesikabalideshita.
The first one is called Pax Romana.
Ichakubalira po chileitwa ngechibaletila Pax Romana.
Now, Pax Romana, this is the period of relative peace and stability throughout the Roman Empire, which made traveling and communication easy. This is where the word all roads lead to Rome comes from.
Pax Romana yali ninchitaimo elio umutende waliko nemyendele ya ubufumu nenshila shakwendalamo shapangiro imilandile isumo kumfwa nokwamba n'abantu fyachitike.
Because before the Roman Empire and without such a big force, it was, things like hijacking, what we call pirates, walking on the road was very dangerous. You remember in the Bible, you hear of the story of the Good Samaritan, how that man was beaten up and left to death. That was the reality of those days.
Ishine nshitaneyo cha seka yokisula kwa mislebo kwenda kulanda yali nishitaimo yali ngea tinyako bamulando bako bati ngatwaberenga muri Bible twamufwa Good Samaritan yantemwa Musamaritan musuma yali nishita bayitete no kuma yali nishite ya kutinya.
So that's the major role that the Roman Empire played, and this same stability and peace and communication, traveling, which was made easy, also made the gospel of Jesus Christ to easily spread to the areas in the Roman Empire.
Napamulandu wa ichiro kwa kwisulishila kustokwevo mwapusana chalengele ne nshita ya kusabankanye chebo cha kwaleso kwangu kokuya munchende isharekanalekana chebo cha kwaleso.
The second factor is the Roman governance.
Chimbi cha konkapo ichachibili buteko na ngutungulile ishila sha kutungulula bakwate abamala.
Now you see, a province like Judea was ruled by Roman governors like Pontius Pilate.
Ngatuamona province iyalinga Judea yatungulwile na governor uwalineshina ya Pontius Pilate.
So what was happening there is that the Roman Empire was divided in major sections like provinces.
Ichale chitika yonse Roman Empire aliya yakanywa mfipimpia ngama provinces.
And each of those provinces was ruled by a Roman official, and in most cases this one would be a soldier, a military person.
Kabiri chila province antema chile chipimpia chanchende chale tungulwa nomukalamba uwa muroma.
However, they allowed local people to govern themselves. So there was a rule of local leaders within that same structure to manage their affairs, the cultural and religious affairs.
Chalinge pinga bamibula bala mitungulu abaloma balesuminisha bajja pamusumba mukyalo munchendeya mwebene ukuyitungulwira emomubelele momwakwatira ekishettekero.
But of course certain cases were only dealt with by the Romans. For example, sentencing a person to death, that could not be done by a local authority like the Sanhedrin, that group of 70 people that was manning the religious and cultural affairs of the Jews.
Lelo ichende shimote shonse abaloma basuminishe lelo twapela kwecha kumwena konga munchende shimo ngokupanika abantu twamona mukutanika bene abaloma baleyititira kimo.
That's why Jesus had to be sent to Pilate. Because he is the only one who had the authority to condemn him to death.
Epamulandu inena Yesu Kristu bamutumya Poncio Pilato, and Poncio Pilato ewa kwete amaka kuli yenchende ngasuminisha kuti apani kwa Yesu Kristu antema iyo.
But for other infringements of the law, they would actually whip you, and the maximum number of whips they would give you was 49.
Shimbi milandu bale pingula fye munshila yako kukapa membya kabina membya bale kapa nga bakukapa bale kapa ali 89.
So now the other factor here, so that was the Roman governance. The other factor was the Roman law and order.
Chimbi ichalipo mwali butandiko bw'amafunde bwa Chiroma.
And this affected governance. It provided a framework for governance and justice that affected the lives of people in the New Testament.
Ichitonze chafishe ukutungulula imyoyo y'abantu mukuteka kw'abaloma balijenshita.
And so we see, there was a very serious justice system with the Romans, very serious laws that needed to be observed.
Kwali amafunde ali ayakosa nokuyakonka bayabiki okuyakonka.
You see the way Paul went for trial. That is one of the examples. Paul went for trial. We see how other people were also even executed. They followed the Roman justice system.
Nga twamona efyo Paulo aile kupingulwa nanga abantu bambi balekonka imipingwilwe ya Chiroma.
So the Roman Empire provided a very important political stability and governance and a sense of normalcy to remove the barbarism that was happening at that time, because that was a very cruel period of life in the human history.
Nga twamona kwebati abaloma basendele antemo bapangile ishida imo isuma iyo ya kwafuishamo ukuleta ukwikala kusuma. Nga twamona bali lyenshita kwali ali ninshita imo yabipisha mwafulile ukutinyo kukalamu.
So if you have any questions on what we've discussed so far, the numbers you can call us are 0773
ngaba kwato ucholi wonse ama namba benga tukusha benga bompyani yanko
0773 83 5272 or 0955
and Temo 0955
526
404.
Those are the numbers you can call us on, and then we can be able to attend to your questions or contributions. So let's move on to religious context, what was happening in terms of religion at that time. Now, the major, religion or religious activity or context or environment that was taking place at that time was Judaism.
Umwela waliko na ifi alechitika mukupepa ifi atebelele paliyishita niyo baletila Judaism.
This is the worship of the Jews.
Ukuku alikupepa kwa Bayuda.
Now, what was important in this worship were the temple and the synagogues. So the temple was a center of religious activities for the Jews, I mean, it was a place of worship. Wherever you are, at least once in a year, you needed to go and worship at the temple in Jerusalem, not anywhere else.
Itempele yali ninchende imo y'abayuda yasalirwe eko bale apanishita imo kupepera chapamo.
And even all other sacrificial activities that we talked about in answering the question that the gentleman asked from Mansa, all those were taking place at the temple. The temple was like that the way people go to the mosque. It was the center of activity. Economic activities were going around the temple, near the temple, and even ended up getting into the temple. That's why Jesus had to whip some of those who were misleading others, and they turned the house of the Lord as a place of business.
Itempele yali ngenchende inonyesha kuti twapalakanyanga nga pamo epo abantu baya mufintu fyalekana kuchita bintu fyalekana enshira imotu mwena konge fyachitike bachirire munomba mukuchita fyo bale chitapala mpepe tempele chabatwala nokufa okwingira na mukati nomba kuti bayibusa mukwambo kati Yesu Kristo akapire bamwamenge.
So those people who were managing the temple were actually very rich people.
Abantu abale mona kulolekesha pamatempele bali abantu bamo bakangana.
You know, these were Sadducees. When you hear the word Sadducees, this was a group or a sect of priests and their relatives that were in charge of the temple.
Ababali ba Masadducees. Aba Masadducees bantu bamo abo bale tungulula mulukuta katwa umfwa Farisi na bambi bonse bali abali mutungulula mulukuta.
So then, in addition to the temple, you had synagogues.
Kubika kwa kwitempele twali kwete bali kwete na masinagogue.
The synagogues were local places of worship and teaching.
Masinagogue yali ninchende shimo shakupepera monga 15 ipyale bomfeshiwa munchende shakana.
And this is where even the education system, where children were actually being trained.
Masinagogue inchende shimo emunaba n'abanono bales fundiwa.
So the synagogue was very, very important, but the synagogues were the places where the Pharisees, they were the ones in charge of the synagogues. The Sadducees were in charge of the temple. The Pharisees were in charge of the synagogues, because that's where they were teaching from.
Ngatwamuna mafarisi bali bamwe abaletungulula enchende shishibelati masinagogue. Ngatwamuna kuti amasadducees bena bale tungulula matempele mulya.
The next thing that we see in terms of Judaism, other than the temple and the synagogues, we have the Jewish sects. There were different groups or parties or factions, whatever you can call them, within Judaism.
Ngatwalweshe chabu icho tulemo nokufunyako kumatempele na masinagogue. Wamona kuti Jewish sects amabumba ya Pharisees ama Sadducees nabandipo abantu abo bayipeleshe.
Yeah, so there were different groups, like we've mentioned. You had Pharisees. Pharisees were very strict with the law, and they also respected the traditions, the extra writings about the law.
Abama Pharisees bali bantu bamo abaposesha kwa mano mukana muno muntu kulwa mafunde. Then
they added in addition to what was written, in addition to the Old Testament, they also were using like what we call commentaries. They were using what we call the oral law, what was not written.
nebishaliko ngokulundako mupiribulo ifya mobaleto ndonga.
And the people liked them because they were like, they were for the people.
Kabiri n'abantu bali batemeno pamulandu wakwe bati bale kitakwati kusekesha abantu bali n'intungulu shishimo shape bakulibe n'abantu.
Then you had Sadducees, whom I've already mentioned, that these were the ones who were managing the temple, and they were like the ruling party. Those were the rich guys.
And twaisa kumasu Sadducees bena bali kwati ebalitungula n'okusungirira itempere bali kwati bantu abapamulu antemo ebali bakutungulushi.
Then you had the essence, those who lived a separate life, dedicated to themselves.
Lero twakwete n'ebumba limbi antemo kwali n'ebumba limbi byebaleta ama essence. Abo bena bayikalire munshira yamufena bena bayikalire.
Then we have another interesting group. I think we had one of the apostles they were Zealots. Zealots were like the picture I can give you is that of Malema of South Africa. They were political, they were militants. They wanted the independence to beat up the Romans so that they can be free again.
Ababena bali kwati ni balya abalelwisha bali baletungulula bali kwati bashirika kufa okuchinja fya
They were freedom fighters.
Bali bakulwisha mutende.
So what we are saying, each of these Jewish sects had actually had its own distinctive beliefs and practices.
Ndatwalosha ko tuletira fya kwati ayina mabumba bonsaba chila libumba lyali kwete shatikero bakwete mubumba lyabo kusana kuba nawo.
So I think today this is how far we can go. We will continue tomorrow with looking at the New Testament context, or the environment, historical and the cultural context, like what was happening at that time, how they were being ruled, how they lived their lives, how they worshipped, which other people were there. So before we even go into the New Testament, so that when we begin to look at the New Testament, you know the environment in which the New Testament was written.
Uwelelo twalapelera motwapelera lero mailo pachiberushi tukatwalirira okumona efyo abantu bali yinshita mukulemba kwa chipangano chipya tyachitike mu batungulirwe mu bayikalire bapepele mu bachitire efintu byonse cyane.
May God richly bless you. We'll see you tomorrow after the 13 hours news.
Lesa engami pala tukamonana mulwa mailo mapani ya 13.